perfect storm of events created the running boom. It was the 1970s sort of me generation, moving away from the protest love generation of the 60s. 70s became the me generation. Frank Shorter won a gold medal in the Olympics in 1972. That put distance running on the map. Jim Fixx wrote his book on running, The Complete Book of Running. Nike developed a cushioned shoe that up until then, there were no cushioned running shoes. And so you could not run distance with bad form, right? You could only run if you were thin, self-selected for running, had good form. Otherwise, you'd just, you'd jar yourself into oblivion by trying, if you were a heel striker. Well, with the advent of this soft running shoe, more and more people started running. And of course, the books and everybody thinking that running was the best thing you could do for your heart. And so it created a whole generation of overweight, heel striking runners who were miserable, but were proud that they were miserable, out there struggling and suffering and grunting and groaning and not losing weight because they were running in a fashion that would just increase their appetite. So they might burn off 400, 500, 600 calories in a long run, but then they go home and eat 700 or 800 calories to compensate for it. So the idea that running was the best thing you could do it took on a life of its own for a long time. And back to where I was in the 70s, I mean, there were a lot of great runners in this country, like a lot of them, 70s and early 80s, before running became the popular participation sport. Again, the popular means of trying to lose weight or improve your cardiovascular fitness through this, through jogging. They were just pure runners in the 70s. And so I was one of the pure runners. I was certainly light enough, and I had a good enough form that I could run well over long periods, over long distances. But like I say, if I'd been, 75% endurance athlete and 25% strength, I suspect that would have been, a much faster, pure marathoner.
What would you say to the person out there right now who is still caught up in that conventional thinking of running and running on a regular basis as part of their health strategy and weight loss strategy? How would you convince them otherwise that they could be putting that energy in another area?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that walking is it's a quintessential human movement. And so walking is the best thing a human can do. And walking fast or walking with a backpack or walking trails, even better. There is no need for humans to run. If you look at our evolution, there's a book called Born to Run. And the thesis was that we evolved as endurance runners because we were doing what they call persistence hunting. We would chase animals for long periods of time. But what's missing in that whole narrative is that humans are able to run. We're not born to run. We're able to run because of all the walking we do and not sitting around. I mean, for millions of years, there were no chairs, there were no sofas, there was no TV, there was no, you either sat squat-legged on the ground or cross-legged on the ground, or you walked, or you climbed, or you jumped, or you sprinted. But you didn't run every day. It was antithetical to health to be expending 500 or 600 calories training to go hunt, a mammoth. The actual fact of living in a harsh environment gave every human being the skills to be able to jog and sprint and walk and hide behind a tree and track the animal and do this for 2 hours until the animal kind of, gave up and you were able to put a spear in it. But our humans did not run daily. And we certainly didn't run metronomically, 8-minute miles or 9-minute miles for hours at a time every day. So we're not really designed to run. We're born to walk. We're born to sprint, and sprinting is a different concept. Sprinting, everybody who sprints, or most people, sprint with good form, right, with a midfoot strike. And also, early humans weren't overweight. Nobody was overweight. So even going back to the 70s, I think the rate of overweight or obesity in the country was like 15%. Now it's, overweight or obese is like 70%. So even in the early days of the running boom, most people who took up running did so without carrying an extra 20 or 30 or 50 pounds, and did so without really engaging in some joint trauma that that required a 2-inch thick shoe, which is what most people are wearing now. These pillows on their feet, which they think are making it easier to run, but actually it's just bypassing all of this important sensory information that the bottoms of feet are supposed to get, and it's putting the impact further up the kinetic chain, up to the knees and the lower back and things like that.
Well, let's talk more about the sprinting and the walking, because it sounds like those are what you're in favor of now. So again, the person that's out there putting in the miles, thinking they're burning all these calories, and they are to a point, but that's their method to maintain or lose weight and keep fit. Let's talk about the benefits of these other two forms of locomotion.
Yeah. So again, it takes a whole book to describe this, which is why I wrote this book. So I can't just, in a brief conversation, lay out the entire strategy and why this works, why a combination of walking and sprinting and a little bit of running and lifting weights and eating right is the ideal way to achieve not just excellent health, but improved performance. So even if you're a person who likes to enter a 5K or a 10K every once in a while, I would still say you're better off spending much of your time, unless you're an elite athlete, right? Let's forget you're a skinny elite runner and you can break 2:45 in a marathon or even 3 hours in a marathon. We're not talking about you. You're appropriate. It's appropriate to go run if you love it. If you don't love it, we can talk about what that looks like. But most people who run are running to either as part of a weight loss strategy, or they think they're improving their cardiovascular strength, and they are. But there are kinder, gentler ways to go about this, and more effective ways to burn fat. So one of the chapters in the book deals with this notion that most people, you go to a popular marathon, like a New York City marathon, has 35, 40, 45,000 people lined up at the starting line. 80% of them are overweight. 80% of them are trying to do earn a credit or a belt buckle, or trying to knock off a bucket list item, but they're not really competing. I mean, the average finish time do you run marathons, Jesse? Have you done
I
any?
did back in the day, and now I've changed my thinking on.
Yeah, cool.
Because
good.
I thought they were healthy back when I was doing them.
Yes,
and now
yes,
I'd
yes,
rather
yes.
not spend all that time away from the family training, and I actually think they're detrimental, and I want to get into this, to my health, to go out there and do that.
No, it is detrimental, I think. So, what kind of time did you run? Do you remember what kind of marathon time?
My best was just over 3 hours. It was either 3:02 or 3:03.
So that's great. Okay. So that's 7-minute miles. 3:03 is 7-minute miles. Do you know what the average finish time for a marathon in the U.S. was last year?
I would say 5 hours.
Yeah, 4 hours and 30 minutes. Dude, I ran for 7 years, 100 miles a week. I was a career runner. I've never spent that much time running in my life. It is unfathomable to me to be out there struggling that long and not being good at it. I mean, I don't mean to cast aspersions on people, but if you're a man and you can't break 3 hours for a marathon after a couple of tries, no judgment. You're not a marathoner. Go find another sport that's more fun. So, the idea that running is going to help you lose weight. People who train to run, typically, a lot of them engage in it because they think they're going to sweat the pounds off. But what happens is, if you haven't trained at a fat burning zone, what we call maximum aerobic function, or the fat burning zone, which is typically for most people is zone 1 and zone 2, which is mostly for most people walking or walking fast. It's not running. If you don't do that, you start burning a lot of your glycogen. And when you burn glycogen, the brain, which is kind of monitoring this whole thing, so the brain goes, wow, we just ran out of glycogen. We need to replenish glycogen. We need to eat carbohydrates after our training session. And as a result, people, as I say, they might go out and run 5 miles and burn 500 calories and then come home and not even knowing it, but subconsciously consume an extra 600 calories in the form of a compensation that the brain is orchestrating, because it's a stressful event that you just engaged in. I mean, running is stressful. People say, well, I love to run. And I would argue that most people don't love to run. They love having run. They love finishing running. They love how they feel after they've run. They love telling people that they run. But the actual act of running is not fun for most people. I mean, it's like saying, I love the cold plunge. Do you love the cold plunge, really? Well, I think you like the feeling you get having done the cold plunge, but when you're sitting in that freaking cold water, are you loving it? No, you're enduring it. You're getting through it because on the other side, there is some serotonin, there's some dopamine hit, there's some endorphin rush, and that's what happens with runners. So, it's when we talk about the runner's high, the runner's high is not necessarily a wonderful beneficial thing that you should seek out every single day. The runner's high, this endorphin rush, is kind of a survival hormone. So to keep you in good spirits when you've done something that your body says you should not be doing a lot of this. So again, it takes a whole book to lay out how this happened, how we got to this point, and why walking on a daily basis is a much better strategy for burning fat, for building muscle and maintaining muscle, because running is catabolic. And even if you're lifting weights, look, as a runner, I lifted weights. I was probably the strongest runner I knew in my field. I was a top 25 ranked runner in the country. One year, I finished 5th at the U.S. National Championships in 1980. And I was probably the strongest weightlifting runner of all the people that I knew. But I couldn't keep the muscle on because it was catabolic. I was burning the muscle off every single day. Running is catabolic. Now, if you're an overweight person and you're trying to lose weight, running being catabolic means you're tapping into the muscle tissue. So now you're an overweight person who has too much fat and wants to build more muscle to burn off the fat. But now you're running is catabolic. Running is tearing the muscle tissue down, and you're not losing weight. You're actually maybe getting more fat. I mean, I've seen, runners who've been struggling at it for 20 years who have the same 25 pounds to lose, except now those 25 pounds are more jiggly. And I just want to pull my hair out and say, look, there's a much easier way to lose the weight, to become healthier, certainly to decrease the amount of stress on your joints and enjoy life, right? And not be struggling and suffering as a result of this pursuit that you took on because you thought it was going to be much more like you thought running was going to be the most beneficial thing you could do for yourself. I mean, a lot of people do. That was the sort of the lure of running for most people, was the one thing I can do that's really going to, kick me into this new level of performance and new level of health and fitness is running. Well, for some people, for a small percentage of people who are really diligent about taking on a strategy that includes diet and lifting weights and well-themed and programmed workouts, yeah, that works. But I would say for 95% of people, maybe more, it's just this literal and figurative treadmill of life that they're on, where they're thinking they're doing themselves a favor and not really as much as they think.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
dietary fiber is not that necessary if you are taking in, for instance, larger amounts of collagen-based products, because the gut bacteria, the gut biome loves collagen. If you're an